Thank you, Mr. Mohan. Thank you, Adarsh, for the kind introduction. I'm talking to you outside of home, so in case my voice is not clear, and if I need to switch off the video, please just let me know. And apologies in advance if for any technical issues, since I'm not at home. Okay, so let's start today's talk. It is in two parts. I will be giving a high-level state of IPv6 and introducing the organizations involved, like IIESoc and INTC, and what we do in ITF. And then Mohit will take the key talk today, which is like how in his institute the journey of IPv6 migration has been ongoing with support from IIESoc and INTC. Though both me and Mohit are here, but we would like to thank Nalini who helped in creation of these slides. So because of the timing, it will be inconvenient for her to attend. So that's why it's Mohit and I with you today. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's start. We are talking about IPv6, but this is the timeline to show how the IPv4 standard started back in 1980, where RFC 91 was the first, which described how the IPv4 address needs to look like. It took multiple years for the first commercial ISP. It was all earlier research work, and people who are aware of the history of the internet well know how all these things happened. But the first commercial ISP happened back in 1989, and then various different things happened because moment the IPv4 standards was published, people do realize, oh, the 32 bits that we have currently will create a problem, and the identification of at one point we will exhaust the IPv4 address space was published in RFC 1338 back in June 92. And immediately the work of, yes, we need to solve this problem, and various different solutions came in between. One was CIDR, a way for us to increase the address space a little bit, the use of NAT so that we can have private addresses and public addresses, and the idea that, like, especially the enterprises can hide behind the NAT and use private addresses. But at the same time, people did realize that these are, at least at that time, temporary solutions, and we need to come up with a new IP protocol, and that is the IPv6 proposal. And we are still talking about, like, the deployment of IPv6, but actually the standard is quite old. And RFC 1883 was the one where the IPv6 proposal first came into picture back in December 96. And at that time, we really thought that, yes, IPv6 will take over. But I'll talk about it in the future slides, that there are various different things that happened, which led to, we are still struggling a little bit in seeing IPv6 deployment, because people feel that, yes, via NAT, via other techniques, they can just prolong the use of IPv4. And some people don't see that what is the advantage of changing the IPv6 version. And we will tackle that why you should care, especially from a university point of view, why we need to move to the latest version of IP and IPv6, especially in the universities. And the IPv4 address exhaustion has already happened. It's a well-known fact that there are, of course, people selling the IP addresses on the market, but as far as the RIR, the regional registries are concerned, we have exhausted the IPv4 address space back in Jan itself. But you will realize that even so many decades later, that hasn't always translated to that, yes, we need to move to IPv6. Next slide. So this timeline was just to set, like, of the journey of IPv6, especially at the standard side and at the ITF side. Now let's talk about what's in the reality. How is the deployment of IPv6 so far? Is there any comment? I heard.
Hi, Dhruv. Your voice is breaking a bit. Maybe you want to try putting off the camera?
Yes, let me do that. Better?
Yeah, better.
I was afraid of that, but I thought, like, no, let's start. At least people should see my face for a second. But yeah, thanks, Mohit. Let's move on. And what I will do now in the next couple of slides is just show how the IPv6 deployment, though it started slow, but it is really picking up. And you would see the blue line in this graph. This is again from APNIC measurements. The blue line shows the IPv6 capability, and the red line shows where the IPv6 is actually preferred. That if both dual stack is there and where both IPv4 address and IPv6 address is available, we would prefer IPv6. And as you can see, it has been steadily increasing, but still we are at 26, 27% and still a huge long way to go. And this is with respect to the whole world. Next slide, you will see what's happening in India. And actually, India is doing pretty well, and especially because of the mobile. And as you realize that in India, most of the people do access internet via the mobile network. And since most of the mobile networks in India, Jio, especially Airtel, have been supporting IPv6, you would see that the use of IPv6 overall is very well. But this doesn't show us the full picture. And that's my next slide. So what is this? This tells us quite a bit about the ISPs, but what is happening at the enterprises? And let me just level set, what do we mean by an enterprise? So enterprise is like any traditional business, which is using the internet for its business, but its main job is not, it actually doesn't care about how the connectivity is this. For an enterprise, it doesn't really matter whether it is IPv4, IPv6, all they care about is business. Think of a bank, think of a retail store. They are here to do business. For them, the IP addresses doesn't really matter. So what's happening there? While most of the ISPs have adopted IPv6, there is a lot of good work happening in the mobile space, at even in home users, not so much in India, but like in US and all, you will see that all broadband is also IPv6. But one place where things have lagged is the IPv6 adoption at enterprises. And this is something even ITF realizes that we have to do, we have to do a better job in setting the stage. Why an enterprise whose bread and butter is about making money, why do they care about moving from IPv4 to IPv6, especially if their work with the use of NAT or with the use of other transition techniques, they are able to prolong the use of IPv4, why they should move to IPv6. And that's something that we will tackle today. Next slide. So why IPv6 at enterprises? As I was mentioning in the previous slide, the bulk of the financial and government business is done at the large enterprise. Enterprises are the backbone of any economy, right? And all these enterprises have privately managed network where they have an admin, and that admin manages the enterprise network. Sometimes it's completely private. Sometimes there is a use of cloud. And especially now with the IoT coming in, things are changing. So now we have to realize that with all these changes, what are the impact on the enterprises and why they need to give extra focus on IPv6. So before we go into those answering these questions, let's just look at what is really happening. And that's my next slide. So what we have done here is from the Fortune top 10 in US, these are the various different organizations. These are the top enterprises, as we will say. Let's look at all these websites of these top enterprises. And when we try to check what is the IP addresses attached to these DNS names and these websites, some of them are still IPv4 and they don't have a presence of IPv6 even on the external facing website. And we really don't, this is an indication that if this is still IPv4, there is a huge chance that the internal network within these organizations would also be IPv4. Next slide. Now let's look at what's happening in India. Similar story. Even somebody like Reliance, but when you go to their Reliance Industries website, you still find IPv4. Our Indian Oil, again, a very big company, Bharat Petroleum, big companies, still on IPv4. Interesting, Tata Motors, State Bank of India, you can find IPv6. So again, there is sort of a mixed bag, but this gives you an overall idea. So what is this telling us? Next slide. Yeah, so there is IPv6. It's not like enterprises do not have IPv6 at all. There is some IPv6. More IPv6 than we think, more IPv4 that we want. There is still lots and lots of networks still running IPv4. So what is happening? Actually, the governments have a huge role to play here, and both from United States and India, governments are taking action. In United States, there is an Office of Management and Budget, and they have set their goal that they would like their federal government, and federal government is also an sort of an enterprise. They also have a private network where all their various different government offices are connected. They would like them to support IPv6. Similarly, Indian government also has an initiative, and with the help of NICSI and various different organizations, there is a clear plan that yes, more and more networks needs to support IPv6. Next slide, please. So, what can we do? There has to be a step-by-step way for an enterprise to migrate to IPv6, and based on various different things, various different surveys, talking to various different enterprises on what is the roadblock. The top hurdle is actually the training. As I said, enterprises are here to do their core business. Internet connectivity is not their core business. So for them, this training is the most important part. The people who run this managed private networks, they need to be trained on how to use IPv6, how to troubleshoot in IPv6, and all that stuff. So that's the first step. And then there could be some hurdles. We will talk about them, especially from the security point of view and the applications point of view, especially if an application is tightly coupled to an IPv4 address and things like that. And whenever you are moving, you do need assistance. There are well-known issues, there are best practices. So discussion of how to do deployment well is the most important thing. And IIESoc and INTC, with the help of RIRs, both in North America, which is IRIN, and in Asia Pacific, which is EPNIC, we have been working together on tackling these issues when it comes to enterprises and IPv6. Next slide. So this is the set of classes which are actually already done. And maybe Mohit, when you get a chance, maybe you can put the link in the chat. In this set of classes, we started with introduction to IPv6. We did a very interesting thing that we had a class followed by lab. The lab part was where we did troubleshooting, we captured packets, we went into Wireshark and look at the packets so that people get a hands-on experience on not just the theory, but on the lab part as well. And that has been very, very successful. So this has been a very good initiative. All the materials are already available. Please check out the slides, please check out the videos. And after 2021, we also did a set of other advanced topics, things like IPv6 and 5G, IPv6 and IPAM, all that thing is available on our website. And now we are focusing on IPv6 and IoT. And that will be something, a new series that we are going to start at the end of this month. So go to our website, IIESoc.in, and you will find all the details about these classes that we have done in the past. And you can see the link is also there about the IPv6 webinars one. So this was the first part of my talk. Next slide. Now, in the second part, I will give a very, very quick brief introduction to the various organizations that I briefly mentioned earlier. introduction to ITF, introduction to IIESoc, and the INTC. So let's start with ITF. Next slide. So first thing to understand, and I think Adarsh played the video about ITF, so you get the idea there anyway, so that was very helpful. But the first thing that I would like to, for us to understand is, why do we even need internet standards? Well, the main aim is we need things to interoperate with each other. Think of the example that was there in the video. We have various different websites, we have various different browsers, you have like mobile browser, you have this, all of this use HTTPS. And HTTPS is the protocol that would enable any web server to connect to any browser in the world. And if we do not have these internet standards published, there would not be any interoperability. This is a way to ensure that any software or hardware produced by different vendors can actually work together. And that's why we do internet standards. And IETF is the premier internet standard organization, which is unique because they do everything openly. And what do they mean by open process? All the internet drafts are in public, all mailing list is public. Nothing happens behind closed door except for a very few things. All minutes are published, so they believe in completely open process, and standards are free of cost, which might be a little different from some other SGOs. And the mission of the ITF is to make the internet work better. And how it does this is by producing high quality internet standards, which are called RFCs, and making sure that they are relevant to the industry and relevant to how people design, use, and manage the internet. Who would you find at an ITF meeting? Well, it's a huge open international community, and you will find vendors, operators, academicians, and in fact, anyone. There is no membership. So just by joining the mailing list, you are part of the ITF and you can contribute. So that's also a very unique quality about the ITF. Next slide. Well, but one thing we realized is, though it is open, if you look at the participation from India, it has been lagging. And when some of us who were active in ITF, and when all the the folks from India, we used to think, what's going on? We have so many engineers in India. We have so many people working in IT and especially in the network technologies, writing protocols, testing equipments. We have such big service providers, but we don't see the participation from India at ITF. We thought that we need to fix that. And to fix that, we established a body, we call it IIESoc, India Internet Engineering Society. It's a non-profit entity that brings together various different stakeholders from India who are part of the networking community, from industry, from academia, service provider, etc., all with the aim that let's try and bridge the gap between ITF standards and the Indian community, which either because of awareness or because of opportunities are actually not participating in the standards making. We might be consuming the standards, but we are not part in the making of standards, and we wanted to change that. So we established that back in 2017 with a bunch of people who used to go to ITF regularly, and we got a lot of support from Indians, diaspora as well. So that was very, very helpful that we had good connections to establish this and then start working on bridging the gap. So what were the set of activities that we decided on so that we can bridge this gap? Next slide, please. So these are the 4 main activities we do. We just talked about the IPv6 webinar series. We do RFCs. We love Meetup. This is again a very informal meetup where we take a technology of interest, get people from India, get people from ITF, and then just hash it out and discuss things. And then our main event is actually the Connections event, which is an annual event. It just finished in the month of April, the first week, and it went really, really well. I see some of the names here in the today call were actually present. And thank you for the support for connections and IIESoc through ISOC as well. And they have always supported us with this connections event, and we are grateful. Do check out our website, connections.iisoc.in. You will find slides, videos of not just the latest connections event, but also the past event. And connections remains to be our premier annual event that IISoc organizes. Uh, at one point, when we used to do IETF meetings in person, we used to also do get-togethers so that, the new people who are coming from India feel welcome. And that was our India community at IETF get-togethers. So these are the events, but what kind of help that we can provide? Whenever there is somebody who wants to participate at IETF and needs some guidance, we have a great set of mentors, great set of people from various different IETF areas, from security, from routing. Like, for instance, I can help with routing. We have Thiru who can help with security. We have Shweta who can help with IoT. So like this, we have right set of people who can answer your questions. And ITF sometimes can be a little daunting, so we can prepare you on how to have a successful ITF meeting. And for this, we have been holding various different RFCs. We talked about this in the connections event, that how we can make any new participant from India at ITF feel more welcome. So that has been the various activities of IISoc. Let me have a few slides on INTC. Next slide. So INTC is a little different. It's established in US, and their aim is more focus on the enterprises side. With the idea being, even in places like ITF, where it is more the participation is more from the vendor side and the ISP, the enterprises are not represented. And let's just take the example, for instance, of HTTP. It's the protocol like HTTP, protocol like IPv4, they are used also in the private networks managed in the enterprises. But for some reason, they are an afterthought, right? So INTC wanted to fix that. And we wanted to be the voice of enterprises at ITF. And again, the main activity that we took were the series of webinars about various different technologies that we think an enterprise networks needs to be aware of. So do check out our website, industrynetcouncil.org, and you will find various different webinars organized by INTC with the focus on enterprises. Next slide. So, as I was mentioning, the aim of INTC, we need to get enterprises involved. Why? Because it impacts them. Internet impacts everyone. And if there is a change in a protocol that's going to impact an enterprise business, it's going to have an issue. And enterprises cannot, not be aware of it. Like things like a change in a TLS version had an impact on how an enterprise network does various different things like lawful intercept or monitor their employees. And if they are not involved in the IETF standard setting, their use cases might have an impact. So that's what we want to make sure, that enterprises are aware of what's happening at IETF, and IETF is aware of what are the enterprises needs. And making sure that any new protocol that's developed also takes enterprise network into consideration. And the aim of INTC is, again, making sure that we provide training, we provide a forum for discussion. Again, we have a huge set of people with deep experience from ISPs, from ITF, from enterprises who can provide various different kinds of help to people who are just starting off with IPv6, for instance, in their network. Next slide. So I think we did cover the IPv6 webinar series, and in the spirit of time, I'll move on. Do check out our website. RFCs we love. We did mention this again. you will find various interesting topics. If you have a topic in mind and you think that, like, we can help find the right set of speakers, so we would like to work with ISOC as well and find, like, the interesting topic from ITF as well as from Indian industry, where this kind of bridging the gap that I was mentioning earlier about can actually happen. Do check out our website and you will find very good set of interesting talks there. Next slide. And my final slide is on the event which just happened, Connections. If I say so myself, we had a huge, successful program. We found a really great set of speakers. We had support from various different organizations, and Connections remains to be the most important event that IIESoc and INTC continues to do. And our aim is that we discuss issues that are happening at ITF. This time, we focused on IPv6 extension headers. There was a talk on IoT. We focused also on not just what's happening at the ITF, but we had a track called Beyond ITF, where we took up things from BBF, which is Broadband Forum. We took up issues with private 5G networks. And these are the things which will have an impact on the enterprise network. And our aim is that they should be well aware of what's the latest thing that are happening in the ITF, for instance. And if you were unable to participate, all the videos and slides are available on the website. Do check them out. And now let me just move to the main meat of today's presentation, which is Mohit talking about how INTC and IIESoc worked with NITK in their journey of IPv6 deployment. Off to you, Mohit.